This week on New to You, musicals, JC Superstar. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. We're continuing in our theme of musicals. Last week, Kristen, who's returning guest with us, brought Into the Woods, and the week prior to that, I brought Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And this week, Jules is going to bring a pick. Now, before we get into that, let's let you know who we are. I am John Holt, one of your hosts.
I am your other host, Julian Cage.
And I am Kristen Sherman.
Guest host.
All right,
welcome. Back.
Thanks, guys.
You're giving actual credence to our topic. You actually know what you're talking about.
That's right.
I do know a lot about it.
But we might put you on the spot with this one. We know this one back and forward.
Well, maybe.
So New to You Show is a recommendation and discussion podcast where we bring things that might be new to you, might be new to other panelists on the table, and we all kind of chat about them. And
yeah, it's like we're hanging out, like around a water cooler or something.
Yeah, just kind of like passing cups of water, sharing lipstick. So, Jules, why don't we roll into your pick?
All right.
Now you're back to life. Tell me, did you miss the earth while you were gone? Or just be colored dreams Sunday afternoon? You will be.
If you strip away the myth from the man, you will see where we all soon will be. Jesus, you've started to believe the things they say of you. You really do.
So for musicals, I chose Jesus Christ Superstar. Music was written by Andrew Lloyd Webber, who I think is a pretty big deal in the musical world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lyrics by Tim Rice, and it started out as a concept album in 1970, and then became a full-on musical in 1971, and then was adapted into a film in 1973, which was, I think, pretty quick cycle.
Pretty fast.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're looking at
And
Andrew Lloyd Webber was 22 in 1970.
Whoa.
And Tim Rice was 26.
A little bit older.
So this is one of their
Older and wiser.
So this was one of their earlier efforts then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be specifically talking about the 1973 film adaptation because I've only seen that. I've not seen it live. And I prefer to listen, if I listen to the music from the film because it's sang the way I'm used to.
Very picky.
And yeah. Like I'm weird like that. Like definitely like I don't like seeing live acts that sound different from the album. I'm weird like that. It would probably be hard for me to see it live at this point, but that's okay. So the reason I chose this one is that I'm not generally like a musical person, and at the time that I first heard Jesus Christ Superstar, I definitely wasn't. Like I think was in this mindset of like musicals are stupid, like.
But say it in like a French accent.
Les musicales c'est nul. But this one got me because the songs just sucked me. Like I just loved the songs right away. In particular, Judas's role, like the guy who plays Judas in the film, whose name I have to look up because I always forget names, played by Carl Anderson.
I think he was in the London cast as well for the Broadway.
Yeah. So many people,
for the Broadway.
Yeah.
For the West End.
For the big UK Broadway.
The West End.
So most of the film cast comes from various productions of the film, and like the guy who plays Jesus, Ted Neely, was actually an understudy for the Broadway show, and you can kind of maybe tell.
Yeah, because he's in the movie.
Is he a little bit mediocre?
A little bit.
We call him.
He's a little bit.
We call him whiny Jesus. So like, what's this Jesus song? It's like. Not one of you. But he's like,
So whiny Jesus.
Yeah, he's whiny.
He's whiny Jesus. Yeah,
he's very like kind of reedy. His voice is a little like thin, and he just comes off a little like.
Yeah, and on the flip side, Carl Anderson, who's Judas, like is just awesome. Like he's just badass,
like a powerhouse.
Yeah, and he's just like super passionate and I mean the thing is, like I think that's part of what's also interesting about this. I think it's also like one of my favorite tellings of that story.
What is this story?
What is this story?
Who is this character?
Well, it's based on this
Christ.
book called the Bible, and
this is my favorite telling.
So it's loosely based on, I forget the specific text, but it's basically the story of the last 2 weeks of Jesus' life.
Right.
It's also, there were a series of like, I don't know, the Bible is a living document. I mean, less so now, but there was a point where there was a group of people who just like, almost like it was the Constitution, were saying, oh, yeah, no, this doesn't work.
Right.
Excise, or, oh, hey, these scriptures that we've like had on the side or that someone just found that just so happened to like work really well for what we're trying to do. Those are good. Let's jam those in there.
Yeah.
And there were some that were found that may have been, who knows how real or, but like Dead Sea Scrolls that had this sort of like, what's the word? It's like a compassionate look at the Judas character and sort of his motivations as maybe a puppet of fate, fate being God, or there's sort of these. He played his role, and it's that was something that the Catholic Church was a little bit up in arms about.
It's like loosely based off the Gospels account of
That's
the
it.
last week before Jesus's death, crucifixion.
Yeah. I like the telling of the story. It is controversial, and I like that it sort of humanizes Judas and makes him a relatable character, and you kind of like understand his motivations, and he doesn't seem like straight up wrong, like maybe the way he goes about things is wrong or something. But yeah, so I like the telling of the story, and I think it appeals to me that it's all in song. What do you call that? Does that have a?
It's just pretty much called sung through.
Okay, so it's
I think
sung
that
through.
would be
Because I think one of the things that put me off about musicals, I mean, again, like I'm much more open to musicals now and so on. It was the fact that you went from like a spoken norm.
like you went from regular conversation
Yeah.
to singing.
Yeah,
Just
and that whole
absurd.
idea that like that you
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
just
like,
belt
You
into
want
song.
to buy a sofa? Well, come
Let me
with
tell
me.
you about it.
You belt into
We've got pull out couches then.
And futons.
you belt into song when the emotions just overwhelm you, then that sort of thing. Like I don't know, that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So the fact that this one is all sung sort of worked better for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's a rock opera, and the songs are kind of like a lot of them.
Like driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the opening songs, which is called "Heaven on Their Minds," sung by Judas, and is still like my all-time favorite, and is a song that I listen to a lot just on its own. Like I
once
just
a
think it's an
week.
incredible song, and it's a great song, and it tells a story, and it tells it with passion, and it's delivered like the actor just does an amazing job with it. So that really like sucked me in from the start, and the first time I saw it, so that it won me over really quickly, and then that kind of like opened the door for me to accept, be more accepting.
Accept musical Christ.
That's right, exactly.
Have you heard the good musical news?
Have you heard the musical word of God?
I also think like it's interesting when it was written and the film adaptation. So there's been all kinds of different interpretations and different like styles of how it was put on or whatever. And the film adaptation is very hippie, like in the dress. They actually filmed it around Jerusalem.
It's like Burning Man in Jerusalem.
Yeah, and everyone's got very hippie like clothing, except like there's odd things, like there are soldiers who wear like silver helmets. So it's a weird
tank
mix of
tops.
contemporary and like not. It's not trying to be period. Like it's definitely stylized. Same with the language and the music, obviously, because it's rock and all that. Yeah, so it's very hippie, and I think it's interesting because it humanizes all the players. Like it was obviously small time, so it's very cult. It has a very cult vibe, especially because there were so many cults around that time. Where people have the same kind of style and look. So in the pop culture mind, I think there's like I associate that time with
Really like
cults.
post Manson.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I feel like it makes it more like feel more that ancient story feel current, in a sense, and which is I think part of what made it controversial as well. And so I thought that was interesting. Yeah, and so I like that mix of modernity with the old with this very old story, and it's a kind of a fresh way to look at it and think about it. And again, like I just love the music, and I think it does and the lyrics do a great job of telling the story, very clearly and succinctly. And yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
All right, I'll go into it. So I really like Jesus Christ Superstar because the film is rated G and because I could watch it
Really?
so me and Jules used to work at a video store in college. And
Together?
yeah.
Yeah, when John introduced me to the film, I should have said that.
So you could watch whatever you wanted, really.
That's such an awesome story. What?
And so this video store is a great little store in Brookline, Mass. You could bring home 6 movies a night if you wanted to.
If
And
you're
I
an
did.
employee.
A whole 6 movies.
Yeah, on VHS. And you could play, while you're working, you can kind of play what you want as long as it's PG or lower.
Mm-hmm.
And on a Sunday morning,
No one would be there.
G-rated movies all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I had moms pushing their strollers, walk up and be like, I am very uncomfortable seeing this. And it's like, I look over and there's Jesus crucified. And I'm like, it's rated G, lady. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's a G-rated movie. So that was, I watched this a whole lot. All the songs are fun. In the movie, they're actually we even got to the point where we knew all the different actors. There's one of the caliphates that they cut to has a really funny voice. I'm trying to think how it goes. There's one with a really deep voice.
The
We must
baritone.
find a more permanent solution to our problem.
What then to do about?
There's this guy with a crazy high, Jesus of Nazareth. How do you deal with a carpenter king? And so,
How do you solve a problem?
Maria, King Maria. So they just had there's a real mix and mishmash of performance levels. Again, you have whiny Jesus, you have Judas, who's amazing. Herod has one of the best songs, but the singer playing Herod is a little softer too, his voice. That's the song where it's so you are the Christ, you're the great. It's a little more bar room, bar hall kind of. So that one's really fun. Again, you have all these varied talents, and the production is really interesting where you have the caliphates climbing on scaffold inside a ruined temple kind of thing. So there's mishmash of ruins and actual caves, and it starts the what is that called at the beginning of a thing where it's they're playing they're playing all the music.
Overture.
Yeah, so they're playing the overture and they're driving the bus in and they're pulling all the props and all the stuff off, and people are putting all their costumes on and transforming. It's almost like bringing the stage out into this place and making it their show, and off you go. And there's just an energy to the whole performance and presentation, and it's electric. It slows down near the end, because you just he's kind of stuck in one place. He can't dance much anymore.
Yeah.
There are some really, really just great moving songs. Run the whole gamut. You really feel for Judas. You feel his frustration and you feel his issues come to the forefront. You feel he genuinely cares for this person and cares for so many other people as well. He is another character who is open-hearted
And kind of conflicted, yeah.
and is playing his role
Yeah.
in this whole fiasco. And and they literally play the other apostles as sheep.
Yeah.
They are the sheep. They cut from a shepherd and a bunch of sheep in a field to Jesus walking with these guys following him in a line. They're blind, and they don't know when they're being.
Yeah, they're
dangerous.
they're groupies,
Right.
Same kind of vibe.
And there's Simon and the Zealots who are we're gonna fuck shit up in your name,
Yeah.
and Jesus tries to put them all down, but Judas from the beginning, you kind of know where it's all gonna go.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how the story ends, so it's sort of given. But what's important is the character's perspective and what you're learning about them as their story flows forward. There's a tension there because you know how it's going to end, and it's more about why do they make their choices, and how do those choices lead them into the situation that you know is going to happen. And they even make Pilate a sympathetic character, where he's someone who is also given a premonition of what's to come. The storm is on the horizon, and he gives this man the outs. He says, you could just walk, like you can walk out of here, you could be done. And
Yeah.
it in his dream kind of he knows that it's a no-win situation for him, and it's interesting to see all that play out. And yeah, I really like it, and it's just fun. Like it's kind of silly, and
Yeah,
like,
it has a mix. Like it's silly in parts, but it's also like very serious in others. But it all works. Like I feel.
yeah. And I've seen a few different productions of it, or the movie one, and then I've seen like sort of college productions and a couple like larger troupe productions, and everyone takes a different tact. Like, you know, the soldiers in like full Praetorian garb, like Roman soldiers, and then times like you're saying where they're like in more military garb with like M16s, or they're dressed like cops. And so they're like cops and they're putting Jesus in like handcuffs, that kind of stuff. So you have, or like fuzzy handcuffs, and they'll have a play on, you know, tweaks on the reality a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it live?
Yeah, I've only ever seen it live. And I was just thinking, one of the productions that I remember seeing, their costumes were more like rock stars. Like they were rock stars and this like group of followers to Jesus. Yeah.
So it's like a different type of cult of personality.
Right. Definitely.
And so what do you think? What do you think of it in general?
I like it. I like it a lot. I think, like you guys said, Judas is that character that like I feel if you're an outsider, you like want to be him almost, because he's kind of relatable in a way, and then he also just like has this badass vocal line, and
Yeah.
you're like heaven on their minds. I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and he
Crazy.
Yeah, and he kind of comes off as, you know, like, I mean, if you view it as a cult, like he kind of seems like the guy who's more grounded and who's
Right.
more like, hey, you guys are taking this too far. Like, whoa, take it easy. You know, like that kind of, right? Like he seems like he's the more grounded,
Yeah.
the voice of reason almost.
It's a little challenging too, because he, you know, like again, you're inside the Hale-Bopp cult,
Yeah.
and you're watching these people like, or Jim Jones, and you see where it's going to go. And if you go to the, like, you know where it's going to go. If you go to the CIA and say, hey, shit's going to go down, and try to like solve it through the man, then what's going to happen is it's going to incite something anyways.
Yeah.
So you can't win for losing in that situation. So it's almost like you kind of have to be someone that you're not and walk away from the situation.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, like he's also,
But he cares too much.
he cares too much, and he's too invested.
Yeah.
And that's a problem too. Like he's not totally innocent. He's
No.
part of this cult. So
Yeah.
he's built into this system, and he's like, oh, it's not like, oh, we should never have done this. It's, oh, we're taking it too far.
Yeah.
Like this, I
Like-
believe in these revolutionary ideas, but not that far down the revolutionary line. And that's going to get us killed.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, a lot of it's about perspective. Like,
Yeah.
are the revolutionaries being brave and breaking into a new world, or are they being suicidal and leading people who are idealistic down a dark path where they themselves are going to be like hurt or ruined or crushed? And, you know, part of this whole thing, like, you know, Jesus was not the only one to get crucified over this whole situation, but he at least is one of the ones who takes it on himself, versus like your Jim Jones, who makes everybody, you know,
Go down with him.
Yeah,
with him,
yeah.
or your Manson, who makes you do the dirty work
Yeah.
and suffer the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I just think the way this reframes or presents the story, like, really does make you like think about the story in a different way, like, or at least it did for me, like,
Yeah.
and made it a lot more interesting to me for some reason. You know, I think, because I mean, I think like I grew up, you know, in like Catholic, and so it just like, you know, that story was a very like in that box, and
Right. It's the
kind of-
mystery. What is that called? Where each piece of the story is told in little
Yeah.
pictures are along the wall, and it's static. It's
Yeah,
set in
exactly.
stone, literally.
yeah. Plus, this was very old school. Like a lot of the we'd have Latin masses and stuff, so it was just very boring. You know?
So you're saying is we should translate this film into Latin and sing Jesus Christ
exactly.
Superstar in Latin?
Absolutely. You go for it. Yeah. So it was kind of my gateway. But I mean, I was thinking about that. I think before this, I mean, I had like been into some musicals, but I didn't but they were more like Disney films, you know. And I didn't even like think of them as musicals.
Yeah.
But like Aladdin, I like is one that just came at the right time, and I watched it a whole bunch, and I had the songs memorized, you know, like. So that had happened before, but this was the first like full on like, this is actually a musical that I was like, okay, I'm starting to get this. And I was thinking about that, like why I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that like in our culture, like, and I think that's changed some since I was in high school, but like that musicals are like considered to be deeply uncool, right?
Like it's almost sort of like nerdy or what? Like
no,
what kind
like
of
it's not
uncool?
even like nerd. I don't think nerdy's the right word, but just like
more campy
and
or like
maybe it's
G-shucks?
because they're so emotional in a sense, and also just that whole like the whole song and dance thing. I think has just at some point like maybe it started with the whole like when the whole idea of cool became very popular and the whole like James Dean like Rebel Without a because like. What's cool is being detached and not caring about stuff, you know? Because before
like fostering your mystique.
yeah, because before that, like musicals and music was a much bigger part of the culture, and like you know, like it was very collegiate to like like jocks would like sing songs on the campus, and that was cool.
Groups,
yeah, and you know, and like music was just a part of people's lives a lot more, and then that became very uncool, and like to like break out in song is like. Very, like can lead to a shameful experience, you know.
Right? Yeah, like it's not something people do in bars anymore. Or
yeah,
I mean, I wonder.
Or if they do, they have to be wasted, or it's a karaoke bar. Like it has to be in this very limited box.
Right. Or they're like at the VFW, and it's the fight song or something for their college, or it's for the Air Force. Like,
right. But even that, it's like I guess that still does happen. But I feel
those are kind of also artifacts of another time.
Right.
Yeah. And the kids who are into that are kind of like they have the a cappella group, which is kind of a stereotype, you know, and is kind of made fun, I think, thought of in jest, you know, like nowadays. And I don't know, I think that's a little bit sad in a way. Like,
yeah.
And I know that I kind of internalized that for a long time. And like now I was able to shed that and be like, you know, it's cool to like break down into song.
I think what it kind of gained like because it's time, like it's not of our time as much in some regards, that it gained a corniness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and again, but I think you get like maybe not Book of Mormon, like Avenue Q's making fun of that corniness. Like it's definitely like it's like poking itself. When they make Evil Dead the musical, it's playing with that corniness. Jesus Christ Superstar is more like
it's not. I think it's
in earnest.
Yeah.
And they're playing with a lot of things, but then the Mr. Show guys do Jizzy Crizzy with Jack Black, and when Jack Black is singing Jesus Christ Superstar, he loves it, you know, and he's into it, and it shows off his vocal range. But there's also a level of like self-deprecation and like, look how corny I'm being a little bit.
And also like Trey Parker, you know, from South Park, and
Matt Stone.
Yeah, like I think he loves musicals. I think he's done many musicals. Like I think a lot of their films had musical elements.
Well, Cannibal the Musical was one of the first live action films.
Exactly, yeah. And then the South Park movie was like a musical, basically. Yep. But again, they kind of like wrap it in humor and sort of make it like it kind of.
And they play with the conventions.
Yeah, and the Book of Mormon is their first straight up like Broadway musical. But it also, I think, because it deals with like their sense of humor and is controversial and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's a straight up musical, so I don't know.
Spamalot did that in a way.
Yeah.
With a song that goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
It's like self.
It's kind of like we're gonna sing a song, and this is how the song is supposed to go, and this is where the song builds. Now you're singing too loud. Sing softer. Sing softer.
Yeah, that's good. Spamalot opens a can of worms for me.
Right. It opens up a whole other can of worms, but not skipping over that.
But I don't like Spamalot.
But at the same time,
I know.
At the same time,
I
feel like the musicals kind of made a comeback, you know, with the high school musical,
right?
And then
Wicked was really like big.
Wicked, but then
Frozen.
What was the other? No, well, Frozen, yeah, no, but what was the other TV show that had like high schoolers who Glee, yeah, which again I don't like any of that stuff, but.
But it opened it up for a different age group, I think.
Yeah.
And it made it okay and cool again, and everybody watched the show. So if your peers thought it was okay, then it was okay.
I think too, it became a thing. Like many shows, no matter what the genre, would like if they'd been on long enough, would eventually have a musical episode.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
there was Supernatural the musical.
Yeah,
like,
there
where they
was,
got
and there was
cursed.
a Grey's Anatomy episode that was all musical.
And like
Buffy,
everybody's always
the
super
musical.
stoked. Like both who are involved and who are watching, like everybody loves it. And yeah, I don't know. It's
Part of that too is that, I mean, a lot of the people who are into it, they love the
They love
theater
these
of it.
characters, though.
Yeah.
And you'll pretty much do whatever for like to see these characters do
Yeah.
something.
That's true.
And the people making it they're into the arts and they're into these conventions and getting to it's a certain way of expressing your story and expressing your characters that is rare, and it's also it's expensive, and
Yeah.
and there's a lot to it, and it's something it's like a little bit of a prize.
Yeah, it's like
to be
something
able
to
to do it.
revel in a bit. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I got to do this. My show was on long enough that
I get
we
to
were
just do
rewarded. We're
whatever.
rewarded
Right.
with
yeah,
this.
yeah,
And I think too, we all grow up with them. Like you're saying, a lot of the Disney movies that
Yeah.
they are the staple. They are built and they're marketed by their music, and a lot
Yeah.
of them are musicals. And that's why, like, a lot of the guys who are big animation people, like your MacFarlane and those kind of guys, that's like Seth MacFarlane. The reason they're musical heads is also because they're animation heads. Like those two things are tied very closely as well. So you kind of have our youths are all tied to this, and then
I think
the people who are in creation are also, it's still a piece of art and a way to express yourself that, yes, it has stigmas attached to it, but
yeah. Musicals, they do. I guess there's just things that work and things that don't. But like musicals generally, I mean, there are exceptions, but overall, they have a certain point of view or quality to them. There could be more diversity within the musical genre.
That's
maybe.
a whole other can of worms.
well,
maybe.
I mean,
But-
but you could argue like, all right, so Hamilton.
Yeah,
that's
that's
bust
opening it
out,
up,
right?
Yeah.
Like
Hamilton,
and-
but then you have like Rock of Ages, and
Yeah.
you have
Maybe that's happening more. But then you also have like things like
But you're talking about then the golden age of musical theater. So you're talking about probably musicals that were produced from the 40s to the 60s, and they were all very a certain way. You have like South Pacific, you have Guys and Dolls,
yeah,
where you get these very traditional musical theater songs.
yeah,
and very stage set pieces.
Right.
yeah, and maybe that's just kind of like just set that idea of the musical, and it's really
Right.
gotten
And I
much
think a lot
broader.
of people have that idea too, where they're like, oh, this is musical theater.
Yeah,
But then you have Fun Home, which
Yeah.
is like even like a little bit different in its musical stylings.
Right, or Hedwig,
Hedwig.
which is like a rock
yeah.
show.
No, it's true. I mean, that now the more I think of more like modern examples, like it
Yeah, yeah.
has been
It does get
broadening out
that,
a lot.
that kind of branding though, like, oh,
Yeah.
this is musical.
Yeah.
and
But then you also have like, I feel like, Broadway is also got the problem that a lot I think I see with animated films as well, whereas a lot of the productions play it safe and just do things that have like the ABBA musical, like what is that called?
Mamma
Mamma
Mia.
Mia.
Which I saw because I went with like somebody's parent kind of thing, and it was just terrible. I mean, that thing is a turd. Like seriously, like that makes me angry. It's like they shoehorned like a story with ABBA songs, and it's like bizarre. It's like you have like a daughter and possible father like singing love songs to each other. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
That's an old tradition though too, like the Irving Berlin, like taking
songs and making them into a musical.
like
yeah.
taking your Tin Pan Alley and writing your White Christmas, like that. That's
Yeah.
the sort of, it's something that's been going on forever. Where I'm not a big fan of. I mean, because I love the music, it's fine, but I'm not like a huge fan of like Elvis the musical or.
Yeah.
All Shook Up
Yeah.
took Elvis songs and a Shakespeare play and made it a musical.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that stuff? I mean, am I wrong to like look down on it, or
Was there
am
like
I being
Bob
a snob?
Dylan clown one?
I think I'm
too?
being a snob.
I don't know if there's a Bob Dylan one, but in what you asked, Jules, I'm actually a big fan of almost all types of musicals.
You're like, I don't care.
So I can't really
Even
say
Spamalot?
like, oh, I like this, I don't like that.
I
I can
guess-
say, oh, I don't really care for the show as much, and for no particular reason. Maybe it's the story. Maybe it's
Yeah.
it
mean,
just doesn't touch me in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess it's just that like I love ABBA songs, but like
Mm-hmm.
they're like, to me it felt like you're kind of like degrading the songs by like shoehorning them into this weird story.
I have a similar feeling where, like, if it's, again, maybe because we're distanced from like we're saying, like, blue skies smiling at me. Like I don't listen to that on the radio. I didn't buy it when it was on wax cylinder or whatever.
Right.
it's not to me a contemporary song. So when I see it in a musical, that's the context.
It doesn't affect you the same way. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's
so,
maybe why I gravitate more towards rock operas, because that's like.
Right. So, but someone who's never seen or listened to ABBA, and this is their contextualization for it, sure. But I would argue
most of the audience is people who know and love ABBA songs,
right.
and that's why they're like, I want to go hear some ABBA songs.
I think where I would kind of take exception with some of that is we have a dearth of creation and creativity. Like if someone makes a Beatles the musical with a bunch of Beatles songs played differently and sung for some and given new context. Well, I mean, what was the Beatles movie? Across the Universe.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a dud because you're taking something that was written to. There's a reason, like when they created this art and they put it out there, and you're supposed to listen to it in a certain context. That's how music is to be ingested, either live or through the album. And then to like throw an alt context on it, I guess like you could argue that music videos do the same thing, and they were kind of like a pairing to this, but usually those are worked with a creative vision in conjunction with the artist for the most part. And in this, it's someone taking the art, and it's not just like someone redirecting a musical a different way. It's someone taking someone else's pieces and like putting them in a transformative work. And oftentimes if you have something that's like amazing and top of the heap in music, like, this is the Beatles, they hold a shining part, it's going to be difficult to make a good, like it's a mediocre musical when you come out to the other end. I would say to someone, go listen to the Beatles. Don't bother with this. And the same, that's my concern with Spamalot. Is like, honestly, there's silly singing and weird stuff in the Monty Python thing. You don't need to go to
But at the same
theater.
But also like Spamalot like actually had the original creators involved, which kind of changes
one or two, but not.
Yeah, but like it's still like that makes it a little more okay for me.
I mean, my concern there is that it was Eric Idle, and he doesn't have the teeth that the other
he's more
Pythons
saccharine.
have. He's a little bit more. Not surface, but he's a little bit more like aw shucks.
Yeah.
And so his music comes off. He takes the edge off. He's softer.
Yeah.
And the other Pythons really just they kind of jab you a little bit. They give you that gut punch that makes it a little more dangerous and a little more fun and a little spicier. And this is just kind of flat. And that was my problem with Spamalot. Yeah. The end.
But so Kristen, as an insider, like how do you feel about like the place of musicals in the culture and like how people perceive them or like I mean, do you wish people like more people were into it, or
should we have Trump ban them or what?
Yeah.
Like he said he
build a
would
wall around Times Square and ban the Broadway shows. Right now we're living in a very interesting age in the sense that people can't really comment on it right now, although people have said, oh, this is the second golden age of musical theater. And with Hamilton, people are saying, oh, we're going to get more diversity and hopefully more
that
diversity.
Would be nice. Yeah.
And you could say, oh, yeah, this is going to open up a lot of doors for different things and different writers, and kids are going to see this and say, oh, I want to write a show like that, or I can write a show like that, or musical theater can be this way, or it can be whatever way I want it to be, and it can still be a musical, and I can be in a musical. And like hopefully that will be the case. It's hard to say right now because there's that psychological thing where if you've done it once, or if people think like, oh, we've had one woman president say we've had a woman president, and they'd say, oh, we've done that. Like
we have
like
that. We have that hip hop.
I did a good thing. Like now I don't have to go see this other thing or like allow this other thing to happen. And I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping this opens up a whole branch and genre, and I think Lin-Manuel will continue producing and creating these amazing shows that showcase the diversity that is in the musical theater world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't even thinking about that angle, but
yeah. I brought that in there, threw it in on the end.
Love it.
Had to be mentioned.
As long as it's not any more Monty Python stuff, then we're all okay.
Sarah Ramirez was phenomenal in that show, I have to say. She won the Tony Award for...
So you saw Spam a lot then?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was phenomenal. Vocally,
She was in
acting.
it. I will say that.
You don't think she was great?
I thought the coconuts
So-
were great.
I just can't. I don't know. I can't get behind it. It's sort of like, I don't know. Like if you're a really good like dagger wielder at the puppy funeral where you're cutting up the puppies, great. Like you did a good job cutting up the puppies, but
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what a good analogy is. No, I don't. Not to. I won't denigrate anyone's performance. I just think that it's an ill-conceived project. I don't know. It's tough. Yeah, there wasn't much competition that year or something. No.
I guess so.
Okay, let me pull up that year.
I know. I'm teasing. Yeah, I honestly though, like,
But you
I'm
feel
picky.
you feel like the genre is sufficiently like I don't know, like you're happy about it where it's at, or
About...
I mean, do you wish it were like that?
yeah, is there
Musicals were like
is there a lot being like? That's a good question. Like how productive or how much new musical comes out? Is
That's
stuff
interesting
like
because there are quite a few revivals going on right now, but there are also quite a few musicals, and almost all the musicals that are on Broadway right now are American musicals, whereas if you look at the
That's true.
plays, very few American plays. All the new works are coming out of England for the most part, and you have like maybe one, if you get lucky, one American play. But I think for right now, the production of getting new musicals on their feet has been great.
And it like somebody who's like starting out or fairly young who wants to like write their own like, is it hard to get into? Is it hard to like put on a show of
Just
your own?
in general?
Like, yeah, like say if you must have friends in the business who or friends who write musicals.
Yeah, for sure.
So is there like a, yeah, I mean, is that easy to do, like to get into? And
or is it a wide open market? Like, is there a hunger for it right now? Like I don't know.
I definitely don't think that there's a wide open market for it. I think that there are a lot of writers and a lot of composers out there, or like lyric and song duos, like people who write together who are pretty well known, that I think it's difficult to kind of get your name and your foot in the door, almost as difficult as it is to like be an actor and get your foot in the door and become recognized. You almost like, you have these writers who are starting out with song cycles who are kind of getting themselves known in that way. So if you have like a witty song that becomes pretty popular, maybe then you can get your foot in the door into writing, but it just depends. Everyone has a different path, so it's
Yeah.
kind of hard
But
to
there's-
say there's one way to do it and there's no other way.
but there's still a lot of, I mean, it's definitely a field where there's still a lot of gatekeepers and that sort of thing. Like there's not a lot of people like
There are some pretty exclusive programs, specifically writing programs for musicals in New York that are very difficult to get into.
And it's not. Is there a lot of like people kickstarting and things like that in this world, or not really?
I think it really depends on the show. Like, what did I see that I should have probably left at intermission?
the disembodied hand. that
No,
fist
I did
people to
not
death?
see that one, but I did see Full House, the musical. And it was probably the most miserable thing I've ever been to. Like it was so disgusting,
Yeah.
actually, that I went with at least 5
But
other
was this
people.
Kickstarted? Is that why you brought that up? Or
It was kind of started by Perez Hilton,
gotcha.
who also starred in it.
Oh,
And
gross.
it became
Gross.
this like cult thing almost. But then people didn't really realize what it was because you weren't seeing your same Full House characters. You were kind of seeing the actors who were playing the characters and what happened to them or what was going on in their lives. So it's kind of poking fun at these actors in real life
Oh, so it was like
who
a
are
meta
going
thing.
through like drug addictions and people
Career
who
issues.
like they use terms that I can't even say on here, like wouldn't feel comfortable repeating to you guys and being recorded saying.
Oh, so it's like pretty trashy.
Yeah, it was pretty
So
trashy.
it's like Perez Hilton, like tabloidy kind of thing, like.
Almost, but then a step worse. Like,
Oh wow.
Did you guys sit through the whole thing, or was it a walk?
I did. I sat through the whole thing because I had a friend there who had a friend who's in it. So we couldn't leave. And I was like, we were all just looking at each other like, what?
And was your friend also like not happy to?
he was not like a musical person, so he was like, oh yeah, it was good. And he was like,
you
Kristen,
don't
what do
know.
you think? And I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh, does he really want my opinion? Is this the time for me to actually give it? Or does he just want me to say, but he said, in your professional opinion, what do you think? So I sat there for a
You're
second
like,
and I was like, well, I definitely wouldn't look at it in the traditional musical sense. I wouldn't judge it on that. And
I
he was
wouldn't
kind
call
of
it a
confused.
musical.
I would say that I would not put it up there with like musicals. It would definitely be something below.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
JC Superstar. Let's get
Yeah.
back onto that real quick before we roll out of here. Jules,
yeah.
would you see JC Superstar live?
I would. Yeah. I mean, I think I it's just been around long enough that like I probably should. You know, like.
Would you be able to sit through it not being the same?
Yeah, I think I would get used. I mean, as long as it was good, you know.
Sometimes they're better. Like
Which is relevant.
I mean,
having a
I
good
think the
Jesus can be really good.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. You know, the cast has a lot to do with it. I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
And whether or not I click with that choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be my concern. Like it would be a gamble, but I'd be willing to take it.
Kristen, would you watch the movie?
I think I will. Yeah.
I think you should. Like I think it's a
Thinking
great
how I need to.
it's a great adaptation because it's very like theatrical, but it's like the sets are the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's neat because it's putting you in the real life location.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it's filmed, like it's very much like it's a musical, but there's close-ups. You know, it's
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Which I have to say, like when I see stage plays, you know, I miss the close-ups sometimes.
They should just have
Jules
lenses.
needs to be on the front row.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a seat that
or I
moves.
gotta bring my opera glasses.
They give you a moving seat that goes up and down to get closer and further.
And you control it and everyone's trying to go forward at the same
That's
time.
right. Yeah, you know, VR.
Yeah. VR.
We're all gonna have
It's changing
row
the theater
seats.
world.
The articles.
Gonna have
And then we'll bring up the question you brought up. Who would you be in Jesus Christ Superstar?
Judas. Duh.
Everyone
Well,
wants
no,
to be
okay.
Judas.
I would not be the right choice. Like, I don't think I would do the role justice, but that's the role I would want, you know.
I guess if you're gonna play Judas, I'll play Jesus.
All right. I'm either Herod or Pilate. I dug Herod's song's really good, but I really like Pilate's song. His other songs are fine, like Whip Him, whatever. But
Whip him.
you know, 1, doon, 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 2, doon,
Oh,
doon,
yeah.
doon, doon,
I
3,
remember that
doon,
song.
doon, 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 ah. So
No.
what? The
No,
count.
no,
Is that what he
no.
does? There he goes. Last night I met a Galilean, a most amazing, or something like that. He had that look you very rarely find, the haunting, hunted kind, or something like that, or
I
haunted.
don't remember.
Anyhow, so there's that song from him, but Herod's song is probably the most fun to sing,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, Jesus, I am overjoyed to meet you face to
Yeah,
face.
that one is silly.
You're getting quite a name all around the place. That song. Yeah. You like that one? So yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar. Where can people see it?
That's a good question. Well, I think you can buy
It's
it or
on
rent.
DVD.
Yeah, it's on DVD. You can buy it and rent it. You know, on all the usual places like iTunes, Amazon. I was able to find a couple of versions on YouTube, although there are definitely some weird ones that are sped up or slowed down or cropped. But I was able to find a decent one with Portuguese subtitles. So if you're a cheapskate, you know, you can just check it out there. But I'm not going to tell you how to get it.
And you can listen to the music on Spotify.
Yeah, the music's out there and different versions of it.
Yeah, the Broadway.
so
The
choose your
Broadway
pick.
cast is good. That's a great record too.
Yeah, and I like the sound of the Jesus better.
Yeah, he's really good in that.
But, you know, like the movie Jesus is fine. You know, he's fine.
He's wine.
Why need Jesus?
Good pick, Jules. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, if you are the Christ, yes, the great Jesus Christ, prove to me that you're divine. Change my water into wine, that's all you need do, and I'll know it's all true. Come on, King of the Jews.
With such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work. Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the last, unless we get Keith in here to talk about his pick, episode in our musicals topic. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho. You can find me on Instagram at Bored, BRED, BORED _ghost, GHOST on Instagram.
And I'm Julian Cage. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Beautiful Jules. And how about you, Kristen?
And I'm Kristen Sherman, and you can find me on Instagram at KRISTNSHERM, which actually is just Kristen Sherm. Kristen Sherm. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us for this series and for dropping your knowledge on us.
Yeah, it was
Thanks for having me.
Really nice to have someone knowing what they talk about on this show.
Yeah, unlike me.
Like us, yeah. We're a mess. You saved us.
Nah.
No, it was great to have your perspective and you know.
You guys are pretty knowledgeable on some musicals here.
Some of them.
A few deep cuts. So before we wrap, though, Kristen, what was new to you this week?
New to me this week. I went to a bookstore and they had this option where you could pick a mystery
print
book.
Books. Do you know that? Like your generation may not know. Not all books are
that's
on
not
Kindle.
They actually have this thing where you can pick a mystery book where your book's wrapped up in brown paper, and on the outside they list 4 books. And they said, if you like any of these books, then you'll like this book inside. And I said, okay, great. Like, oh, I really loved this one book. And like, oh, let me Google these other books. I kind of know what they are. So I bought my book, and I'm like, great. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to open my book. I go home and I open my book, and my book's a cookbook. What? I was like, are you kidding me? I was so mad.
So it's like a scam, basically.
I don't know for sure because they kind of had like some stories with each recipe, but I'm like, this is not what I expected, obviously. So I called them, and I didn't want to be rude because I figured some worker really liked this and thought it was a great choice. And they were like, yeah, you can exchange it. So I picked a new book, and I came back. Like, I picked a book that I wanted, and I came back to the store, and I returned the book, and they were kind of awkward, and then I noticed they had like a little pile of the cookbooks behind them. So other people had obviously thought, oh, this is going to be a great book. Wow, it's a cookbook.
Yeah, I mean, that's not cool.
So, I mean, I can't say that I suggest
like
doing the mystery book route.
Well, the other examples would have had to have been other cookbooks.
There was one example, and it was a memoir by Julia Child.
Yeah,
so, like, but if your other 3 books are, like, not cooking related, then why are you going to do that?
Well, it's also if the books, all right, if it's like how to build your own patio, making your own oven, like killing a boar, and then and then inside is a cookbook. It's sort of like, oh, so these are all DIY things.
Oh yeah, like
really
homemade, like okay.
Yeah. No, that was a terrible choice.
Yeah, that was my new to me.
Oh, so your warning. This is your new to use a word of warning.
This is my new to me.
Well, I hopefully that bookstore has learned its lesson.
Yeah, well, my friend got one too, and she actually got an actual novel, and I was like,
more like it.
Of course this would happen to me. I gotta go back.
See, I thought maybe like one of the 4 books listed in the front was in there. Like, oh well. No. If you liked them, you'll probably like it.
Just like these 4 books, we cut them all up and put them together again.
Made a new book.
Made a new book. That's a combo. Well, again, Kristen, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. That was awesome.
We'll get you back again sometime soon.
Yes.
You're going to travel soon. Travel safe.
Thank you.
Have a good time across the pond.
Thanks.
It may not be new,
but we hope it was
new to you.
This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
Be with him together forever, without the limitation of time, ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're 2 separate entities.